All right, so are you ready to really like dig into Shi Tiesheng?
Yeah, bring it on.
We're talking about his病隙碎笔. Um,
Random notes from a sickbed.
yes, exactly.
That title.
It's pretty evocative.
It is. And, we're going to be looking at life suffering and faith.
Yeah.
And all through this lens of chronic illness, which is just fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I'm really struck by how Tiesheng just kind of starts with his limitations.
Right.
He's like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with.
Doesn't shy away from it.
No, he doesn't.
Instead, he folds it into his philosophical explorations.
Yeah, it's like, this is my reality.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use it to understand the bigger picture.
Exactly. And one of the things that really got me was this idea of embracing limitations.
Yeah.
He has this analogy of a play, right? A pre-written play.
Oh, yeah.
Where we all have these assigned roles.
Right. And you can't just switch roles.
No,
you're stuck. You're stuck.
Which I kind of hate.
You got to work within the constraints.
Right. Exactly. And you have to accept the things you can't change.
I like the way he talks about it with a plane.
Oh, yeah.
You're on a plane and mid-flight, something goes wrong.
Right.
You can't just be like, oh, I'll jump on another plane.
Right.
You are stuck on that plane.
You're in it.
Yeah. And so how did that make you feel?
Oh, I think, it highlights this vulnerability that we all share.
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
Yeah.
Subject to forces beyond our control.
Totally.
And, maybe that's where freedom is.
Whoa.
Accepting that predicament.
I like that. That's pretty deep.
Makes you think.
Yeah. What are some planes you've been stuck on?
Oh, my goodness.
And what did you learn from those experiences?
Well, think about that a lot, those experiences that kind of force you to confront your limitations. I mean, for Tiesheng, he takes it a step further.
Oh, yeah.
Connecting it to his illness.
Right. So you're on that plane.
Yeah.
That's malfunctioning.
And you're undergoing dialysis at the same time.
Oh, gosh.
That's his reality.
That's a lot.
He sees his struggle with illness like being stuck on this plane, this body.
Yeah.
And he has to navigate that turbulence.
Yeah, but he does find freedom within it.
He does, and it's really interesting how he does that.
Yeah.
He's not denying the suffering. He's choosing to find meaning and purpose within it.
Right, and this leads us to, I think, his epitaph.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which is a line from Shuzimo's Farewell to Cambridge.
I love that poem.
It's so beautiful.
It is.
I depart lightly as I arrived lightly.
Just beautiful.
It's really poignant knowing his philosophy.
It speaks to his acceptance,
Yeah.
Detachment from the material world, not clinging, but embracing the flow of existence.
Arriving lightly, departing lightly.
Like a breath, recognizing that our time here is temporary.
And I think there is a sense of peace in that.
There is.
But he doesn't just talk about limitations.
No.
He also digs into the nature of suffering itself.
He does.
And he compares it to a risky river rafting trip.
I love that analogy.
It's hard.
It's challenging, but it can lead to growth and self-discovery.
Right. But then he's like, but illness is not an adventure.
Yeah. He makes that distinction.
You don't choose it.
It just arrives.
Yeah.
And it demands resistance rather than active pursuit.
Yeah, suffering's just part of life.
It is.
We can't always choose our challenges.
No, we can't.
But we can choose how we face them.
I think that's a really important point.
Yeah. And he also talks about how illness, helped him appreciate the simple things.
Right.
Walking, breathing.
Experiencing the world without pain.
Right. These become profound gifts.
They do when they're threatened.
And he tells this story about doctors checking his optic nerves.
Oh, yeah.
For damage. And he uses that to illustrate how we remember misfortune.
More vividly.
Yes. More vividly than good fortune.
Have you ever noticed that about yourself?
Oh, absolutely.
Our minds, they cling to the negative.
Right.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Instead of celebrating what is good.
And it's so hard to shift that focus. It is.
But Tiesheng suggests that it is possible.
Oh, interesting.
What if we could just be more aware of the good,
the
little everyday miracles, that we often overlook?
Yeah, and what if we could approach suffering with curiosity?
That's a good one.
As a teacher rather than an adversary?
I like that.
And this is where I think his exploration of faith comes in.
Right.
Because he's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
God doesn't just grant wishes.
No.
He brings up Job.
Yeah. Who remained faithful despite all that suffering.
Yeah. And it's like he's pushing back against this transactional view of faith.
He is.
If you believe, you'll be rewarded.
Are you good? You get good things.
Yeah, he's not into that.
He wants something deeper.
Yeah.
He's looking for a faith that can give you strength and meaning even when things are really bad.
And he has this cool analogy to explain, like, his view of the world.
I love his analogies.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so imagine like a vase.
Okay, beautiful vase.
But now imagine pieces breaking off. But here's the thing. They fit back perfectly.
Oh, wow.
Right?
That's beautiful.
I know. And it shows his belief in, like, this interconnectedness.
Yeah, that resists individual intervention.
Right, like we're all part of this larger order.
This delicate balance.
Yeah, and like when we try to control things,
Right.
it might mess everything up.
It could disrupt the harmony.
Yeah, it makes you think, right?
It does.
What are the vases in your own life?
Ooh, that's a good question for everyone listening too.
Yeah, where do you see this interconnectedness? And how does it, like, affect how we live?
Right. How should we approach our lives and our interactions with the world based on that?
And so he emphasizes these limits of individual power.
Right.
But he's not saying that God is powerless.
Yeah.
He's saying God's power is in providing hope,
Right.
allowing for redemption,
Even in the face of suffering.
even when it's really hard.
Yes.
And I like how he kind of redefines this idea of a higher power.
He does.
You know, it's not about a God that just comes in and fixes everything.
Right.
It's a force that guides us.
Right. Empowers us to find that meaning and purpose in our struggles.
Yeah, not about erasing suffering, but finding strength in it.
He's got all these different concepts of God.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even ones that seem kind of contradictory.
Like what?
Those who make false promises, those who embrace chance, the unpredictable.
He's really searching
He is
for a deeper understanding of faith.
a faith that can hold the complexities of life.
And I like how our deep dive into his work kind of mirrors that.
It does, doesn't it?
Like we're exploring all these different facets,
Of piecing it together?
these seemingly contradictory ideas.
Yeah, to try to understand it all.
And he advocates for a God that, like, embodies perfection.
Yes, and guides us towards it.
But recognizing that journey,
Is never ending.
it's always ongoing.
It's about seeking the constant evolution of our understanding.
I love that. And then he, like, makes this turn.
He goes into literature.
Yeah.
And he suggests that literature, just like faith, should strive to uncover the hidden and unfamiliar, to delve beneath the surface and explore the mysteries of existence.
It's like he sees this parallel between the spiritual and artistic.
I think he does.
They're both a search for truth,
Right.
confronting the unknown,
Yeah,
and wanting to connect to something bigger.
absolutely.
I love that.
What about the books that have impacted you the most?
Ooh, good question.
What is it about them that resonated so deeply?
Yeah, do they connect with this idea of uncovering the hidden?
What unfamiliar?
And just as he does this with faith?
He explores the duality of human nature.
Yeah, he's like, there's good and evil in everyone.
It's a classic theme, isn't it?
Totally. But what I find interesting is he really emphasizes confession,
Oh, he does.
not just for past wrongs.
No, but acknowledging the capacity for wrongdoing within us.
It's like, don't ignore your shadows.
Yeah.
Confront them, acknowledge them, and choose differently.
It's not about guilt or shame. It's about honesty.
Right, so that we can move towards healing and growth.
And then he points out this cultural difference
Oh, yeah.
between China and the West.
Okay.
In China, the focus is on challenge and less on confession,
Interesting.
particularly when it comes to the Cultural Revolution,
Right, he even has that story from that time.
destroying property.
Yeah, with his classmates that belonged to a counter-revolutionary.
It had so much complexity.
Yeah, he's not just talking about concepts. He's wrestling with his own experiences.
Right.
And how he may have been
Just
complicit.
these systems of oppression.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from implicating himself.
No, he doesn't.
And it raises questions about individual responsibility.
Especially in a society that encourages conformity.
And he analyzes the dynamics of power, too.
During that time.
Yeah, how the constant labeling of us versus them.
Right, created this climate of fear and suspicion.
Yeah, it's like the act of categorization.
Dividing people into groups.
Can fuel violence.
And persecution.
And we see this again and again.
Throughout history.
Yeah, religious wars, political conflicts.
It's dangerous, this in-group, out-group thinking.
So where do you see this happening today?
Oh, that's a great question.
And what are the dangers?
And how can we challenge it?
And how can we foster a more inclusive and compassionate approach?
Right.
And Tiesheng even says he felt caught between those categories.
Yeah.
Not belonging to either us or them.
Left him feeling powerless.
And uncertain about his own identity.
And it's a reminder that these labels
Yeah.
often don't capture the complexities of human experience.
We're more than just categories.
So much more.
What does this make you think about your own experiences of belonging and identity?
Yeah. Have you ever felt caught between groups or labels?
How have those experiences shaped how you see yourself in the world?
And then he shifts to the idea of a utopian afterlife.
Oh, yeah.
And he's really skeptical.
He's like, I'm not buying it.
Especially those who claim to hold the keys to paradise.
It's like he's wary of those who promise easy salvation.
Especially if it's about following a specific leader or ideology.
He sees danger in that thinking.
Definitely potential for manipulation.
Yeah, and control.
Yeah, and he points out how this pursuit of a guaranteed paradise can lead to competition and indifference towards those who are seen as less deserving. It's like he's asking, if our motivation for doing good deeds is to get into paradise, are we truly acting out of compassion?
Are we being truly good?
Yeah? Or is it just self-preservation?
That's deep. It makes you think about your own motivations for doing good.
It does.
What drives your actions?
Is it reward or punishment?
Yeah, or something deeper.
A real desire to make a difference.
And how do those motivations, shape your choices?
And then he argues that even if a perfect afterlife did exist, the desire to reach it could corrupt paradise itself, transforming it into an arena for human ambition and conflict.
It's so interesting how he brings this back to interconnectedness.
It all ties together, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like he's saying, even in a perfect world, our actions have consequences.
We can't escape responsibility.
Or the impact we have on each other.
And then he contrasts this competitive paradise
with a Buddhist notion of universal salvation.
That's a really different idea.
It is.
What's that about?
No one is truly liberated until all beings are liberated. It's a big vision.
Yeah.
It challenges us to think beyond our own desires.
Right.
And consider the well-being of everyone.
What would that world look like?
What would have to change to make that happen?
That's a big question.
And this brings us back to love.
Yeah.
Which Tiesheng sees as the most powerful force for good.
Capable of overcoming all the bad stuff.
The greed, the isolation, the suffering.
It's not just romantic love.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's between friends, family.
Strangers, even those we might consider enemies.
Yeah, he really digs into the complexities of love.
Distinguishing it from liking or possession.
Right, he's like, true love requires openness.
Vulnerability.
And a willingness to embrace all the messiness.
Oh, the human connection.
Yeah, and then he tells this story about two dogs.
I love that story.
They keep trying to get together.
But their owners keep them apart.
Right.
It's so simple, but it speaks to this basic need.
Connection.
To connect, to love, to belong.
It's in all of us.
And while he recognizes the risks of opening ourselves to love, that vulnerability can lead to disappointment and pain.
Yeah, heartbreak.
He ultimately believes the rewards outweigh the potential heartache.
It's like he's saying a life without love is a diminished life. Devoid of meaning and purpose.
What role has love played in your life?
Have you experienced both the joys and the sorrows?
How have those experiences shaped your understanding of yourself and the world?
And then he just dives right into sexuality.
He does, particularly in the context of disability.
Yeah, he challenges that assumption that disability means you can't experience sexuality.
It's a bold challenge to those norms.
Yeah, that stigmatize and marginalize people.
And deny them their full humanity.
Their right to love and intimacy.
He refuses to accept those limitations.
Yeah, he's like, no.
Pushing back against that idea.
Yeah, disability doesn't diminish you.
It doesn't negate your sexuality.
The capacity for love and intimacy is part of being human.
Regardless of physical ability.
And he redefines sexuality as a language of love.
It is.
A way to express those deep desires for connection.
That transcends physical limitations.
It's about desire, passion.
The longing for connection.
Universal experiences.
That aren't limited by the physical.
And he argues that true sexual expression
lies in embracing both vulnerability and strength.
Encouraging people with disabilities to resist those societal pressures.
To claim their right to love and be loved, to express their desires and explore their sexuality without shame.
What a powerful message.
It is.
Self-acceptance and defiance.
Claiming the right to love and be loved.
And then Tiesheng focuses on writing.
On his creative process.
Yeah, how his experiences have shaped his work.
It's like going meta.
I know.
Exploring storytelling and how our personal lives impact our art.
He describes writing as self-discovery.
Exploring his inner landscape.
And grappling with his identity.
A powerful tool for processing emotions.
Confronting hard truths.
And making sense of our experiences.
And he says something really interesting.
Oh, what's that?
He says, writers can't create authentic others. They can only construct authentic versions of themselves.
It's challenging, but it speaks to the subjectivity of storytelling.
Every character, every plot, every world.
It's filtered through our lens.
Of experienced beliefs and our understanding of human nature.
It's like even when we try to make characters different from us,
they have traces of our inner world.
Our fears, desires,
and contradictions.
So how do you see this in your own creative endeavors?
That's a tough question.
Do you draw from your own experiences in your work?
How do you navigate that balance between authenticity and stepping outside your perspective?
And lastly, Tiesheng emphasizes the importance of embracing the journey of creation.
The ups and downs.
The uncertainties, the detours, the doubt, the inspiration.
That lead to the finished product.
It reminds us that creativity is not linear.
But messy.
Unpredictable.
I think we should pause here.
Let it all sink in.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
There's so much to unpack.
I think it's good to reflect on what we've explored.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've seen how Tiesheng weaves together personal experiences, philosophy, social critique.
It's a tapestry
that makes us think differently about limitations, suffering, faith, and just what it means to be human.
What stands out to you?
What resonates?
We'll be back soon to continue our exploration.
Stay with us.
There's more to come.
Okay, so we've been talking about how Tiesheng kind of embraces his limitations and even finds freedom within them.
Yeah, it's a powerful concept.
But he doesn't shy away from suffering either.
Right, he sees it as part of the human experience.
Yeah, and a source of both pain and potential growth.
It's a delicate balance.
And he uses his own life to examine these ideas.
Especially his experiences during the Cultural Revolution.
Remember that story he shared?
About destroying property with his classmates?
Yeah, the one that belonged to a counter-revolutionary.
It's chilling, really.
Yeah, how easily people can get swept up in ideology.
Especially when it's fueled by fear and social pressure.
And he even admits to feeling a sense of power in that moment.
It's a dangerous kind of exhilaration.
Yeah, being part of the in-group.
But it makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
We all want to belong.
To be part of something bigger than ourselves.
But what happens when that desire leads us to betray our values?
To do things we know are wrong.
What forces can make us complicit in these systems of oppression?
And how do we resist those forces?
How do we find the courage to stand up for what's right?
Even when it's risky.
When it could cost us our safety or social standing.
Tiesheng also talks about that constant labeling.
Us versus them.
Yeah, during the Cultural Revolution.
Creating this climate of fear and suspicion.
It's like the very act of categorizing people.
Dividing them into groups.
Can lead to violence and persecution.
And it's a pattern we see throughout history.
Religious wars, political conflicts.
It's a dangerous way of thinking.
So where do we see this happening today?
It's everywhere if you look for it.
And how do we challenge these narratives?
How do we build a more inclusive and compassionate world?
Tiesheng even describes feeling caught between those categories.
Not fully belonging to either group.
It left him feeling powerless.
And uncertain about his own identity.
It's a good reminder that these labels don't capture the complexity of human experience.
We're so much more than just categories.
We're individuals with our own stories.
And struggles.
It makes me think about those times when we felt like outsiders.
Those moments when we haven't quite fit in.
They can be painful.
But they can also be opportunities for growth.
To question assumptions.
To challenge norms.
And to develop a stronger sense of self.
So how have those experiences of not belonging shaped you?
What did you learn from those moments?
And how do you navigate the world today because of them?
Then Tiesheng shifts his focus to the idea of a utopian afterlife.
And he's pretty skeptical.
He doesn't trust anyone who claims to have a monopoly on truth.
Or anyone who promises easy salvation.
Like, he's seen how those promises can be used to manipulate people.
To control them.
He's not interested in easy answers.
Or quick fixes.
He points out how the pursuit of a guaranteed paradise
can lead to competition.
And indifference towards those who are seen as less deserving.
It's like the desire for paradise itself becomes a source of division and conflict.
It really makes you think about your own motivations.
Are you acting out of genuine compassion?
Or are you just trying to secure your own spot in some cosmic reward system?
It's a good question to ask ourselves.
Tiesheng even suggests that even if a perfect afterlife existed, the desire to reach it could actually corrupt it.
It's a profound thought.
Like our human flaws, our greed, our envy, our desire for power.
Those things don't just disappear because we die.
In fact, they might even become amplified in a place where the stakes are so high.
It's sobering thought.
It makes you rethink what true paradise might look like.
Not as some external destination,
but as an internal state of being.
A way of living in the world.
He contrasts this idea of a competitive paradise with the Buddhist notion of universal salvation.
That no one is truly liberated until all beings are liberated.
It's a much more expansive vision.
A vision of interconnectedness and collective well-being.
It challenges us to think beyond our own individual desires.
And to consider the well-being of all beings.
What would a world like that look like?
A world where we prioritize collective liberation over individual gain.
It would require a fundamental shift in our values and systems.
And this brings us back to love.
That's the key.
Tiesheng sees it as the antidote.
To greed, isolation, and suffering.
It's not just a feeling.
It's a force for change.
A commitment to action.
And it's not limited to romantic love.
It's a love that encompasses all beings.
A love that transcends boundaries and differences.
A love that fuels our fight for justice and a better world.
And he really emphasizes vulnerability in love.
Letting down our guard.
Risking being hurt.
In order to experience true connection.
It's scary.
But Tiesheng believes the rewards outweigh the risks.
The life without love is a diminished life.
Devoid of meaning.
He tells that story about the two dogs.
Who keep trying to get together.
Even though their owners keep them apart.
It's a simple story, but it speaks to that primal need to connect.
To love.
To belong.
And then he dives into this exploration of sexuality.
Especially within the context of disability.
He refuses to accept the limitations that society places on people with disabilities.
Especially when it comes to love and intimacy.
He challenges the assumption that disability equates to sexual incapacity.
It's a bold statement.
He sees the capacity for love and intimacy as inherent to being human.
Regardless of physical ability.
He redefines sexuality as a language of love.
A way to express those desires for connection that go beyond physical limitations.
It's a beautiful perspective.
It makes you rethink our assumptions about sexuality and disability.
And the full range of human experience.
He encourages people with disabilities to resist societal pressures.
To claim their right to love and be loved.
To express their desires and explore their sexuality without shame.
It's a message of self-acceptance and defiance.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive, what are your biggest takeaways?
What's resonating with you?
What questions are swirling around in your mind?
We'll be back in a moment to wrap things up.
And explore some final thoughts from Shi Tiesheng.
Wow. It's amazing how much we've already unpacked, from embracing limitations to the power of love, and even like Tiesheng's perspective on sexuality and disability.
It's really incredible how he blends personal stories, philosophical ideas, and social critiques.
Yeah, it's like he's creating this whole tapestry of thought, right?
Exactly, and it all comes back to his experiences, especially during the Cultural Revolution.
Which really shaped how he sees suffering faith and just what it means to be human.
Absolutely, and before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more fascinating aspect of his work, his exploration of Qigong.
Oh yeah, that's right. He talks about his potential to heal illnesses that doctors can't even explain.
Yeah.
You know.
It's intriguing, isn't it? This openness to practices that are often seen as outside of mainstream science.
Totally. It shows a willingness to explore different ways of knowing and being in the world.
And he's not alone. There's a growing body of research exploring the mind-body connection and alternative healing methods.
Yeah, like even if we don't fully understand how Qigong works, its effects on health and well-being are becoming more recognized.
And it ties in with his embrace of limitations, acknowledging the limits of our understanding and being open to what we don't know.
It's like he's saying there's more to reality than what we can see and measure, right?
Exactly. There are mysteries, there are possibilities, and we shouldn't dismiss them just because they don't fit into our current scientific models.
But even as he embraces those possibilities, he also cautions against seeing Qigong as a quick fix.
Right. It's not a magic bullet.
It doesn't erase the fundamental realities of being human, the limitations, the suffering, the search for meaning.
He emphasizes that Qigong is a tool, a practice, a way to engage more fully with life.
And he's skeptical of those who use it to gain power or exploit others.
Which is a good reminder that even in spiritual practices, human ego and ambition can cause harm.
True spiritual growth, it seems, is about moving beyond those desires and cultivating compassion, humility, and a desire to help others.
And that brings us back to those core themes we've been discussing.
Confronting our limitations, embracing the power of love, and finding meaning in a world that can feel chaotic.
Tiesheng doesn't give us easy answers.
Instead, he offers a framework for navigating life's complexities.
With honesty, compassion, and an openness to the unknown.
He reminds us that even in the face of huge challenges, the human spirit can find strength, resilience, and connection.
He encourages us to question, to challenge our assumptions, and to keep learning about ourselves.
His work really is a gift.
One that keeps on giving.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your final thoughts?
What insights will you take away from Tiesheng's work?
What new questions are you pondering?
And here's a final thought for you all.
If Tiesheng were writing today in a world facing climate change, social divisions, and rapid technological advancements, what would he say?
What new insights might he offer about suffering and the possibilities for connection in our ever-changing world?
That's a great question to consider.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the mind of Shi Tiesheng.
We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit transformative.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new and fascinating topic.
Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep connecting.